I need another phone. I know this is hard to believe.
Freshman at a small Midwestern space institute.
To dream big. Good morning.
Nowadays, the concept of comedic audio commentary for film and television is, in and of itself, a popular form of entertainment. Audiences love to sit in on group or solo viewings of popular and/or infamous media to watch real-time reactions, but when we go to the theater to see a film, we can't actually speak during the runtime. It's only come the credits that you finally have the opportunity to talk about what you watched. But you miss the chance to capitalize on the timing and genuine emotion in the moment, at least if you're in public. That's part of what makes these commentaries and reactions so popular. It's mostly sincere reactions to usually absurd pieces of media, and nothing is more absurd than a B-movie.
Monster in a bathing suit? Yeah, only this time it's different.
For the unfamiliar, the B-movie has its origins in the 1930s. The term originated from a formerly common practice in which theaters used to present two films for the price of one, aka the double feature. During the Depression, Americans didn't exactly have the financial flexibility to go out and see the latest releases. So theater owners, suffering from a massive downturn in business, devised a tactic to simultaneously save costs and draw in a greater number of customers. One feature was, of course, A, the other B. A was the main attraction, the film with the bigger stars, the bigger budget, and bigger production values.
The double feature sort of made a class distinction between the A movie and the B movie.
The B movie was comparatively less expensive and polished, usually played first. By the 1950s, with the rise of commercial television, production departments for B movies downsized into TV production divisions, continuing to create similar content just on a smaller scale. The term B-movie evolved to categorize films not necessarily part of a double feature, but referring in general to low-budget genre movies. These became increasingly popular throughout the 50s, horror and sci-fi at the cornerstone of some of the most successful and iconic productions. American director and producer Roger Corman, often called the Pope of pop cinema and the King of Cult, worked on over 500 films in his lifetime, many of which came to be beloved B-movies. Some of the most famous are his films adapted from the works of Edgar Allan Poe, including The Fall of the House of Usher, The Raven, The Pit and the Pendulum, and The Mask of the Red Death. The Fall of the House of Usher was actually only shot in 15 days, and produced on a budget of $200,000, a fraction of the typical cost for more lavish productions. And because these movies were so cheap to make, studios made thousands. From the early 30s up until the late 70s and early 80s, the B-movie went strong. Studios could make a big buck through small expenditure, and the hits were worth a few duds along the way. Come the late 80s, there existed an utterly massive library of these mostly forgotten films. They seemed destined to be largely lost to time and the popular consciousness, fading out of memory with little send-off or recognition. Until a comedian and actor from Green Bay, Wisconsin, realized the massive potential of this archive, that the afterlife of these films didn't have to be obscurity. And thanks to his ambition, comedic styling, and sincere passion, we were given one of the most iconic sci-fi comedies to ever grace television. This is the history of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
In a not too distant decade, back in what we call my day, there was a television show called MST3K, created by a man named Joel. His comedic timing fit for every role. He saw bad movies were good for some fun, and soon enough his magnum opus had begun. If you're wondering how he made the show and other movie facts, remember, it's just a video. You should really just relax for Mystery Science Theater 3000.
The man who would go on to create Mystery Science Theater was an entertainer from the start.
From Minneapolis, Joel Hodgson.
Joel Hodgson was born in 1960 in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. As a young teenager, Joel started performing ventriloquy and magic acts.
I was like doing gigs, making money. I had a magic show. I'd do birthday parties. I was a clown.
He participated in several local events in the Green Bay area, eventually earning the title of Green Bay's Junior Magician of the Year. Joel also cited his early interest in puppets around this time. One of his teachers recognized and nurtured the interest, which would eventually become a core part of his comedy.
I mean, in 4th grade, I had a teacher who identified like I was really interested in it. And we'd practice ventriloquism in her 4th grade class. And there were like 4 kids who had dummies, and we'd bring our dummies in and practice. My picture for my class picture is me with my ventriloquist dummy.
His act was something he would continue to develop into adulthood, adding musical and comedy elements to his performances. In 1981, Joel won the campus comedy contest at Bethel University in Minnesota, which led to him headlining the grand opening of Minneapolis's new comedy club, the Comedy Gallery, officially kickstarting his career in stand-up. A year later, Joel went west and moved to Los Angeles, continuing to perform stand-up at several regarded clubs, where he'd soon be noticed by a producer of Late Night with David Letterman. Mere weeks after his move, the producer, Barry Sand, had a tape of one of his acts, and a few weeks following, Joel was on his way to New York to perform on Late Night. For the next year, Joel would continue to find success in mainstream entertainment, growing to be even more popular in LA's comedy clubs, being featured on HBO's annual Young Comedian special, and joining Saturday Night Live.
You know, you guys are really easy.
But despite Joel's success and recognition, he was finding his work less and less fulfilling. Public recognition brought with it a degree of discomfort, and the Hollywood scene was becoming exponentially unappealing. Joel feared he was becoming, quote, a showbiz person, his passions being infiltrated and to an extent confined by the structure and machine of mainstream entertainment.
It was great, but it was kind of like it was starting to lose its meaning for me, and I was like, I didn't know what I should do next.
So what happens when the meaning drained out?
The stress was kind of getting to me to have to create more and more material.
And build things.
And build stuff.
Yeah.
And travel with it. And
you wanted to stay in the art.
Yeah.
The final straw came in 1984, with what might have been the biggest opportunity in Joel's career yet. The offer of a starring role in a new sitcom for NBC. But Joel didn't find the script funny, and he responded to the offer by turning it down, which NBC executives interpreted as a tactic to get more money out of the deal. They remade the offer, tripling the amount, and shocking Joel. He couldn't believe that they were incapable of comprehending sincere criticism, instead taking it as a purely self-motivated move to squeeze more money from the network. Joel refused the offer and left LA for Minneapolis, quitting comedy altogether.
And then I just decided, it's like, maybe I should like quit and just see what happens to me. Like, what is it going to feel like if I stop? You know, who am I, right?
Back in Minneapolis, Joel began working a variety of jobs, one of which was designing and building toys, with a particular interest in building robots. The sense of unfulfillment still shadowed Joel, though, as he described, "Not doing comedy for me was like living my life with my arm and leg tied behind my back." So he returned to stand-up in 1987. He incorporated some of the props he built into his new acts, describing to audiences that he worked for an organization called the Gizmoplex Institute, and his creations were made in the Mystery Science Lab. Joel was actually creating his props in a warehouse next to a film production studio, run by a man named Jim Mallon. The two inevitably crossed paths and expressed interest in working together in the future. Mallon later became the production manager for the station KTMA-TV, or Channel 23. And in 1988, when his superiors needed a 2-hour time slot filled for Sunday evenings, Mallon reached out to Joel.
I just pitched him the idea. I said, we have a broadcast facility and some good gear. Do you have any ideas?
Joel came up with the rough concept of someone stuck on a satellite who would watch bad movies, accompanied by 2 robot supporting characters, and production soon began on a demo tape. In this demo, Joel explains the concept. He launched himself into space in the ship he built, called the Satellite of Love, after the song of the same name by Lou Reed. joined by the robots Crow, named after another song by the Jim Carroll Band, Gypsy, named after Joel's pet turtle, and Beeper, who would later evolve into the character Tom Servo. This early version only spoke in beeps, hence his name. Malin and Joel weren't the only ones behind this demo, however. Two more comics, Josh Weinstein and Trace Ballou, were brought on by Joel, while Malin enlisted an editor and jack-of-all-trades from the station named Kevin Murphy, who assisted with camera work, lighting, writing, and even performing. Reportedly, Malin's superiors were skeptical of the pitch, but he was able to convince them to give the team the opportunity to refine the concept. The team did just that, and the idea transformed into Joel, his character now known as Joel Robinson, being more or less a captive on the satellite of love. A janitor for the Gizmonic Institute, he was trapped on the station before being launched into orbit, forced to watch terrible movies in an experiment conducted by the MADS, mad scientist Dr. Clayton Forrester, played by Trace Ballou, and fellow scientist Dr. Lawrence Erdhart, played by Josh Weinstein. The two force Joel to watch terrible movies in order to find the absolute worst, so they can use it to take over the world by driving mankind to insanity.
Well, speaking of violations, here's a little cinematic intrusion called the crawling hand.
To maintain his sanity, Joel, ironically, builds robot companions using the parts of the satellite that would have allowed him to stop the movies, all of which is explained in the intro, which details the setup and introduces each of the characters. The last concept to finalize was the title. According to Jim Malin, when the show was to debut on KTMA, we didn't have a title. So I said to Joel, "What do you think?" And without blinking, he said, "Mystery Science Theater 2000. Joel had seen the words Mystery Scientist before in promotional material for the magician Harlan Tarbell. The 2000 was later bumped up to 3, and the rest is history.
Join us, become one of us. Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Joel explained in an interview with Art of the Title in 1998 that they never storyboarded, but they did create rough sketches, remarking that a lot of things were made up as they went along. Joel stated, "Trace did an actual, almost architectural design for the set, which he constructed from the ground up. Trace is much more of a craftsman than I, and he really stepped up our game. I'm comfortable getting things on their feet, but you need a guy like Trace with a critical eye who can do the expert execution. Or at least, expert for us." Joel also explained that the concept and look for the series were inspired by the 1972 sci-fi film Silent Running, in which the lead character, a lone man on a spacecraft, reprograms and names 3 service robots who keep him company. He also remarked that everyone, regardless of role, helped with the show's production. Jim Malin and Kevin Murphy had, as Joel described, the production know-how, but each member of the crew pitched in outside of their own expertise. Josh Weinstein hung the starfield behind the opening sequence's iconic moon, and later Mike Nelson, the head writer and the succeeding host after Joel, picked up the hardware for the sets and helped the team in building them. The bots were ultimately established as a cast of 4. There was Cambot, who didn't speak and was implied to be the interface between the cast and viewer.
The camera in that show was a character, and it was written that way. I mean, Cambot was a part of the repertoire or whatever in terms of the writers and the mythology of the show, and I embraced that. I thought that's fun.
What's that, Cambot? What? Look at ourselves on the monitor, boy? Okay.
Gypsy, played by Jim Malin, Crow, played by Trace Ballou, and Tom Servo, played originally by Josh Weinstein before Kevin Murphy took over the role in Season 2. Gypsy was the bot with the heart of gold, though the dimmest of the group. Crow was, as Ballou described, the wise ass.
Hey, Crow, what you up to?
Well, I noticed the suggestion box was full.
I didn't know we had a suggestion box.
Oh, well, I suggested that we get one.
And Servo was the smarmy, self-confident ladies robot, according to Weinstein. He also noted that the show's budget was microscopic. Everything, including the puppets, was made by hand. The format of the series was simple. Episodes typically opened up with a back and forth between Joel and the bots in space, and the MADS down on Earth, who were introduced officially in the 6th episode, before the premise of the episode's movie was explained by Dr. Forrester.
Yes, but first we're going to scour your palate with a little cinematic science fiction sorbet. It's an old cereal called Commando Cody and the Rocket Men from the Moon.
Then the cast of The Satellite of Love would receive the movie sign and run to the theater to watch the film, riffing on it with a handful of intermissions in the form of short comedic segments. before ultimately concluding with one. Because KTMA had already licensed films for the Minneapolis area, copyright wasn't an issue. Once the show was picked up by Comedy Central, HBO Downtown Productions handled the licensing. According to Joel, it was the more unknown films that they were really after. He said in an interview for Wired, film distributors would do this trick, where they'd license you several movies. Half of them might be movies you'd heard of, and half were the movies we actually wanted, the B movies. We didn't want the cocaine. We wanted the baby laxative they put in the cocaine. The show premiered in November 1988 on Thanksgiving Day. Jim Mallon set up a phone line for viewers to call in so they could gauge the audience response, which was a little mixed.
What do you think?
It stinks!
Only a few thousand people tuned in to the first episode, Invaders from the Deep, and not all of them caught on to the concept. Some viewers actually complained that the movie kept being interrupted by the quips. But the positive responses were incredibly enthusiastic as the show continued, and the initial 13-episode season was bumped to 21, running until May of 1989. The show survived a near cancellation when KTMA almost decided to replace it with broadcasts of the movies riffed on the program, making it thanks to the outcry of the burgeoning fanbase. But the station did ultimately file for bankruptcy soon after in July 1989. Fortunately, HBO was looking for new material at the same time, and Joel and Jim made a deal to bring Mystery Science Theater to cable television. On November 18, 1989, almost a year after its initial premiere, MST3K made its cable network debut on the Comedy Channel, which would later become Comedy Central. Originally, the network wanted the crew to move production of the show to New York, but they weren't keen on relocation, concerned as well about network interference. Kevin Murphy said, "If we had done the show in New York, it would have been canceled within a season or two. There would have been people in there sticking their fingers in it." And the reason the show got to grow was because no one wanted to come out to Minnesota.
You guys are in Minnesota. You're filming the show out in Minnesota. Any plans to move to the mega centers, New York or Los Angeles? Are you happy in Minnesota?
No, it works there. Comedy's too important to be left to professionals. That's why we do it there.
It was during the show's first season on the Comedy Channel that the crew had the opportunity to fine-tune several ideas and visuals, now working with more resources at their disposal. Riffs developed by the writers watching the films several times together. The very first episode to air on national television was The Crawling Eye.
I mean, I don't get this. What's a giant eye gonna do to you anyway? Like pick you up and wink you to death?
Writer and performer Mary Jo Pehl noted that the writer's room was alive with activity, describing it as cacophonous.
We just engage in this sort of group Tourette syndrome.
The typist had to transcribe everything that he or she could catch. Sometimes we'd be stopped on a frame for a good 10-15 minutes, because there were so many jokes. But Joel stated that their goal was not to ridicule or be mean-spirited. Rather, he saw it like a variety show built on the back of a movie. Towards the first season's end, Joel was also working to get his friend and fellow comedian, Frank Conniff, onto the team as a writer. But the channel nearly chose not to renew their contract. Luckily, the show survived another close brush with cancellation due to the positive press around it, becoming the channel's signature program. Conniff joined the team along with writer Mike Nelson, but Josh Weinstein left the series to pursue his own projects. Weinstein was only 18 years old at the time, a fact Joel cited for his friend deciding to go his own way. Weinstein didn't gel with the show's transition to a more tightly scripted format, and left to pursue projects with more freedom for improv and experimentation. His role as Dr. Forrester's partner in crime was filled by Frank Conniff as TV's Frank, the doctor's lab assistant, while Kevin Murphy became the voice and puppeteer for Tom Servo. In the show itself, when asked about Dr. Earhart, Frank holds up a milk carton depicting his face and simply says,
"He's missing."
Even more changes came with the next season, like more elaborate sets, musical segments, and more films outside the bounds of just horror and sci-fi. Around this time, the Comedy Channel and its rival network, Ha, merged to become Comedy Central. And keen to retain their audiences via what they considered their signature series, executives offered MST3K a generous deal. 3 more seasons, each consisting of 24 episodes. Now with guaranteed security and a method to the madness, the team got to work on some of their most memorable episodes. Mary Jo Pehl joined the crew at this point as well. Her onboarding experience, something quite a few younger people today might relate to.
I heard through the grapevine that they were looking for another writer, so I called Mike Nelson and in my very Minnesota way said, if it's okay with you, I am interested, but I don't want to be a bother. And then I hung up.
The series continued to perform well, but come 1992, Joel was starting to feel some creative stagnation. He was interested in starting projects outside of what had become routine, while Jim Mallon wanted to keep evolving and improving the series, looking to future projects like a feature film. Season 4 ended with MST3K's most iconic, if not most loved episode, Manos, The Hands of Fate.
Oh, this is so awkward.
Yes. That's what the game is. Yes.
Do something! Gah!
Around this time, the series was also given the Peabody Award by the University of Georgia for television excellence. The series was still going strong, but in 1993, Joel was beginning to feel that confining pressure again. Halfway through season 5, he left the show. After 5 years, Joel wanted to do something different. He said, "I want to become a behind-the-camera guy. I want to get on the next weird show. I want to be an idea man." He explained in a press interview, "It's time for me to hang up my red jumpsuit and move behind the camera. There's an old show business adage I once heard Adam West say. Stay in the same costume, and before you know it, you end up signing pictures at an RV show." For some time, Joel and Jim hadn't been seeing eye to eye on the production. Each of them reported having disagreements about responsibilities, oversight, and authority on the show. Joel explained he felt Jim failed to acknowledge the ensemble effort of the production, exerting his influence as director and producer, while Jim stated whatever Joel thought the show was at the beginning, it now didn't function that way. At the time, with the push for a theatrical film and the show being bigger than ever, Joel was less and less keen on the state of the show and his role in it. He simply said, "I don't want to be a movie star." On October 23, 1993, the 12th episode of Season 5, Mitchell, aired on television. In this episode, Gypsy overhears the Mads conspiring to kill their new temp, Mike Nelson, played by Mike Nelson, but believes they're talking about Joel. In an effort to save him with Mike's help, Gypsy is able to get him to an escape pod, throwing him in before Joel can protest. Thanks to Gypsy, he makes it back to Earth, but furious with their test subject's escape, the Mads send Mike to the satellite to replace him, thus beginning a new era of MST3K. Mike was never initially intended to succeed Joel. The crew brought in actors for auditions, but after Mike did a screen test with Trace Ballou and Kevin Murphy, the three seemed to click. The writers knew they had to craft a different dynamic between Mike and the bots, though. Joel was their creator, but Mike was one of the gang. According to Ballou, the on-screen persona was like a pizza restaurant manager who's only maybe a couple months older than the staff is.
Hello there! Welcome to the SOL, the satellite of laughs, as we like to call it.
We've tied up Mike and jammed an oily rag into his mouth so that we may bring you the following joke.
Despite Joel's blessing with Mike taking over, audiences were split on the new host. Some viewers appreciated the fresh direction of the back and forth between the cast, while others came to recognize that Joel had been the source for a lot of their enjoyment of the program. Rumors of Jim and Joel's declining relationship made their way into fan spaces as well, escalating disagreements between groups online and initiating what came to be called the Great Joel versus Mike Flame War of 1993. But ultimately, the unhappy fans appeared to be a vocal minority. Ratings for the series didn't change, and Comedy Central signed them on for another 24-episode season. Season 6 began airing July 16, 1994, introducing Mary Jo Peel's character Pearl Forrester, the overbearing mother of the evil doctor. At the same time, an MST3K convention hosted in Bloomington, Minnesota was incredibly successful, a live performance of the show garnering a standing ovation. Executives from Universal were also in attendance, reportedly impressed by the fans' enthusiasm for the series. Later in the year, though, another member of the cast announced their departure, Frank Conniff. He said to fans, "I have a need for change. even if the change means losing the best job I've ever had, and most likely will ever have. I have a need to grow and evolve and to find new challenges and adventures in my life. As the conclusion of the 6th season approached, there was no announcement regarding renewal for a 7th. Without a contract, production shut down when the year ended, and many members of staff were laid off. In early 1995, Jim Mallon flew to New York to meet Comedy Central executives. Sometime after, in an event sponsored by the Museum of TV and Radio in Los Angeles, the network's president, Bob Creek, and Jim Mallon assured fans a season 7 was coming. But they also had another development to look forward to. Universal Pictures had finally greenlit a film production, agreeing to distribute it through Gramercy Pictures. The film was shot over the course of several weeks at Energy Park Studios in St. Paul, Minnesota, though it supposedly didn't perform well with test audiences, and underwent a series of cuts and reshoots. Meanwhile, in mid-1995, Bob Creek was replaced as Comedy Central's president by Doug Herzog. Under Herzog, the season 7 contract was finalized, but it only consisted of 6 episodes. And come the end of the year, Comedy Central apparently had no interest in renewing again. Herzog cited low ratings, but fans speculated the increasingly strained relationship between the network and MST's production company, Best Brains Inc., was the reason. Letters by the thousands arrived at Comedy Central's offices, pleading for the show's survival. The network responded that rumors of cancellation were exaggerated. But on March 14, 1996, Best Brains announced, "After a long run on Comedy Central, it's official. Yesterday, CC told us they have decided not to purchase any additional MST3K episodes, and that they have agreed to release us from our contract. We are now free to look for a new home for Mystery Science Theater 3000. The Sci-Fi Channel has recently expressed some interest in MST3K, and we are in discussions with them." A month later, Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie, finally hit theaters on April 19th. The film was effectively a more lavish production of a typical episode, riffing on the 1954 sci-fi movie This Island Earth.
The Jetsons 2 after the Armageddon.
Its budget was under $5 million, but due to a limited release, it only made back about a fifth of its budget, grossing $1,007,306. Reviews from critics were generally positive, but fans were disappointed with the limited release, though they traveled from all over the country to see it. The final episode on Comedy Central aired a month later on May 18th. In the finale, Dr. Forrester tells Mike and the bots that he's disconnecting the umbilical cord that keeps the satellite of love in orbit.
You can't disconnect the umbilicus!
We'll die! What do you want? I'm evil!
Gypsy and Servo manage to use the satellite's power to escape the atmosphere, and the cast end up traveling to the edge of the universe, where they all transform into spirits. Forrester transforms into a baby, and the series effectively leaves off on a cliffhanger, allowing it to go in any direction if it ever got picked up by a new network. As luck would have it, on June 24th, the Sci-Fi Channel announced, Sci-Fi Channel has rescued the award-winning comedy series Mystery Science Theater 3000 from cancellation. This came with a caveat, however, that being there was now a much slimmer category of film for the show to riff on, movies that were strictly science fiction. Several of the crew were unhappy with the closer hovering of executives on the production, Kevin Murphy expressing, "We had these bitter, dry, humorless trolls in charge of our show, and they were giving us notes, and they were insisting on us having a story arc. What the hell do you want with a story arc? This is a puppet show." Exactly a month following the announcement, another bomb dropped. Trace Ballou, the man behind both Dr. Forrester and Crow, declared his departure. MST3K has been a wonderful part of my life, and I will miss working with all of the talented people at Best Brains. This is not a decision I make lightly, however. After 8 years, 150 shows, and a movie, it is time for me to move on. In the fall of 1996, production began on Season 8, Bill Corbett joining the cast as Crow.
I was hired initially just as a writer. They didn't quite know what to do about Trace leaving and about Crow. And finally, they had me and a whole bunch of other people on staff and off audition for the part. And I gave, I think, what was a pretty sad audition as a puppeteer. But I think I had the right voice or attitude or something, or they were just desperate. But whatever it is, it worked out.
He's boxed in.
Yeah, well, I'm cardboard.
Shut up, you two.
On the 1st of February 1997, the show had its debut on the Sci-Fi Channel. The spirits of the crew returned to the Satellite of Love to find Crow, who has already physically reincorporated. He explains he's been living there for a few hundred years, in which time his voice has changed.
I was only at the edge of the universe for about 5 minutes. I got all bored and stuff, so I came back here. Had a few hundred years to kick around.
Sure.
I did all the decorating myself, though I worked with a consultant on some of the...
Crow, where are we?
Don't know.
Earth, meanwhile, has been taken over by intelligent apes, and the crew make contact with a character named Professor Bobo, also played by Kevin Murphy. He's revealed to be working for none other than Pearl Forrester, who was cryogenically frozen and is now set on carrying on the experiment. A few episodes later, Earth is destroyed, and Pearl and Bobo chase the cast across space in her Volkswagen microbus spaceship, the Widowmaker. A member of the group called the Observers, named Brain Guy, also joins Pearl in her mission, and together the trio torment Mike and the bots. Halfway through the season, the role of Gypsy was taken over by Patrick Bransegg from Jim Mallon, who shifted to spending more time on behind-the-scenes work, as well as with his family. Now, the full original cast of the series had been completely overturned since it first began. The 9th season started airing in March 1998, with the cast falling through a wormhole and reappearing in orbit around present-day Earth. While the show had been renewed, ratings had plateaued, and the network decided to shift its time slot. When there was no improvement, the time slot was changed again, this time from Saturday afternoon to Saturday morning. Barry Shulman, who was the vice president of programming at the Sci-Fi Channel, was the series' biggest advocate at the network, but he departed that year, though not before he was able to get the show renewed for a 10th season. The troubles with the time slot hadn't ended, however, the series being shifted to much less prominent slots at 11 a.m. on Saturdays and 11 p.m. on Sundays. Soon into 1999, only a year after Sci-Fi had acquired MST3K, Best Brains Inc. announced that the channel had decided not to order more episodes, and thus production would end after season 10 was completed. Fittingly, Joel made his heartfelt return in the final season, saving the satellite after discovering it had been engineered to self-destruct after 10 years passed. TV's Frank also returns, making friends with Bobo and reconnecting with Joel, who declines to take Mike and the bots back to Earth.
No, I don't really want to.
Why?
Why? Well, I'll tell you why, because the years I spent here on the Satellite of Love were the best damn years of my life, and I wouldn't want you mugs to miss a minute of it.
Really?
Yeah, really. It made a man out of me, and maybe, just maybe, if you're lucky, it'll make a man out of you too.
Yeah, that's it. Right. You get going and I'll stay here and I'll get busy being a man.
Yeah. That's right. I knew there was something I liked about you, Mike. And you two bots, you just keep them flying and remember Joel, all right?
All right, Joel.
As production winded down, Best Brains laid off staff, auctioned off their props and parts of sets, and by the end of June, after 10 years of production, Best Brains offices were empty. The series finale, Danger Diabolic, aired August 8th, 1999. The Satellite of Love is once again threatened, re-entering the atmosphere and crashing after Pearl abandoned the experiment to become dictator for life of Qatar.
They've been courting me for some time. They even sent me this beautiful basket of flavored sand.
Luckily, Mike and the bots survive, and they receive a happy ending. Mike, Servo, and Crow continue to live together in an apartment in Milwaukee, Gypsy having gone to found a successful startup. The three sit down to watch a movie together, it being none other than The Crawling Eye.
The Crawling Eye, the Marty Feldman story.
Oh, Forrest Tucker. He's the guy that makes sure the tree's shirt tails are in.
This movie looks kind of familiar, doesn't it?
And thus ended Mystery Science Theater. Rumors of another network picking up and saving the show would persist into the year 2000, but those never came to fruition. Its cast and crew moved on to new things, both inside and out of the world of entertainment. Reruns on the Sci-Fi Channel would continue for a few more years, though whispers of revival never quite went away. Joel began efforts to bring the show back in 2010, and in 2015, he negotiated with Jim Mallon an agreement to purchase the rights to the property before launching a successful Kickstarter campaign. It was one of the largest ever for film and video, earning over $5.5 million. The revival starred Jonah Ray, Patton Oswalt, Felicia Day, and Hampton Yount and Baron Vaughn as the voices of Crow and Tom Servo, respectively. Past cast members would also return for cameo appearances, and on April 14th, 2017, 14 new episodes of MST3K debuted on Netflix. The revival ran for 2 seasons, and following its end, Joel revealed he was still looking for other means to continue the series. More crowdfunding campaigns were launched beginning in 2021, including one to fund a new streaming service and the current home of MST3K called Gizmoplex, working with the distributor Shout Factory to handle home releases. A 13th season consisting of 13 episodes was produced under this umbrella, hosted now by Emily Marsh, portraying the character Emily Connor.
Who's that supposed to be?
The season premiered on Gizmoplex in mid-2022 before becoming available on Pluto TV a year later. Another crowdfunding campaign was launched in October 2023, but failed to reach its goal, and thus a 14th season and MST3K itself could not continue in production. At the time of this video's release, the series remains in hiatus, but it's unlikely that this will be forever. Though the series has undergone several trials with cancellation in all the time since its inception and across the period of its airing on broadcast television, the fans kept it alive, and do so to this day. This video itself wouldn't even be possible without them. Satellite News, the official MST3K fan site, has archived the entire history of the series' production, as well as preserved taped episodes, formerly active websites dedicated to the show, and compiled a dedicated episode guide to MST3K in its entirety. The site is run by Christopher Cornell and Brian Henry, and is an excellent hub for new fans and old to get to know the series at an even deeper level. Episodes are still available for free on numerous streaming platforms and through MST3K's official YouTube channel, and audiences young and old continue to tune in decades later. Mystery Science Theater 3000 ran for a total of 15 years on broadcast television, and in that time, its artists, writers, and performers were able to produce some of the most unique television to ever air.
It turned out, we were doing stuff that people really sort of latched onto and enjoyed.
It's one of a kind. Nothing else like it.
They do something that no one else does. I mean, it's brand new television. I'm just fascinated. They're just the funniest things I've ever seen in my life.
It's kind of got that home sort of feel to it, like you can't see a big studio, you kind of see a garage.
I started getting fan mail, and people would tell me really personal details of their lives, like I'm going through a horrible divorce, or my father is really sick and your show makes me laugh. It's the one thing I look forward to. And it suddenly occurred to me that I wasn't just going to a job every day, that what I did was actually beamed out to people, and people were watching it. And I still have trouble making that connection when I do an autograph line, or I still get emails and fan mail from people saying how much the show has meant to them.
Working on a tiny budget and an even tinier set, MST3K developed into a phenomenon, exceeding any of its constraints. Special for its ability to allow the audience to feel like they're in on the joke, that they're a part of the experience.
They seem to know a little bit about everything.
I think we've done our job if one viewer somewhere gets the most obscure joke that we put into one show.
And it's not as a result of market studies, and it's not a result of, we think this will work. We're just doing it our own way, and people who like it are tuning in.
My friends and I get together every Saturday, have a raging pancake breakfast, and sit down and watch Mystery Science Theater on Comedy Central.
I have a lot of faith in the group of people that are down here. It's an extraordinarily talented group of people that all have many diverse interests and a lot of things in common.
What are we going to do today? Well, we're going to watch TV and make each other laugh. Oh, and the hard part?
we were laughing our butts off, and you can't ask for more than that.
Had to make really funny, smart people who I respected, make them laugh.
One of the things was, trying not to laugh, while I'm shooting the show was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. This was a clever bunch of people, and they had my sense of humor, and the jokes and a lot of the stuff that was coming out of their mouths would make me chuckle, and I was working the camera, and it was hard not to shake it.
I'm proud that I acted when I did, that I had an idea, and I kind of had the resources to kind of get it to the point where I could fulfill my part of Mystery Science Theater.
In an interview in 1990, just 2 years into its 10-year run, Joel simply said, "It's about liberty in a small, goofy way." And that is probably at the heart of it. It appeals to an innate human desire to unabashedly say what you think. Whether it be Mike or Joel up in the Satellite of Love, or even Jonah or Emily, it remains a place audiences will keep returning to. In the not-too-distant future, they'll be waiting for us in the Mystery Science Theater.